Hi and welcome to the running channel. I'm Andy.
And I'm Anna, and today we are going to be rounding up some of the best carbon plated running shoes.
Yeah, don't worry if you don't know what a carbon plate shoe is or what it's for. We're going to be taking you through why some shoes have carbon plates, what started the trend in the first place, and ultimately and most importantly, giving you a roundup of some of the very best shoes in this category on the market right now.
And stay tuned to the end too, because Andy and I will be picking our favourites from all of the ones that we're going to show you. First off though, please do hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you get notified when we upload new videos all about running, which we do every week. It really helps us continue with what we're doing. Right, let's get stuck in.
Before we talk about the specific shoes, we thought we'd really quickly take you through what carbon plate running shoes are and why they've become such a popular choice for lots of runners.
This all started with Nike's Vaporfly 4% shoes in 2017. And as the name suggests, they claim to give you a 4% improvement on your performance. And that was down to the spatula-shaped carbon fiber plate that ran through the midsole along with Nike's Zoom X foam. So the reason why carbon fiber was selected as the material was because it gives you a bit of a propulsion effect, therefore giving you a little bit more speed going forwards.
From the Nike Vaporfly 4%, then came the Nike Vaporfly Next %, which promised even more improvement for runners. Ultimately, that's also been followed by the Nike Alphafly Next %, which was based on the prototype shoe that Eliud Kipchoge wore when he broke 2 hours for the marathon distance back in 2019.
So we know that these shoes can make you faster. We even did our own experiment on the running channel with our videographer Tom to see how much faster he could run a 5K in the Nike Next %. To find out the answer to that, make sure you watch the video. But what is it that's behind this extra speed?
Well, this is where there's some debate. Nike released a study which seemed to show that it might be the carbon plate itself that was behind a kind of springboard effect that might be responsible for the increased speed. But there's a lot of speculation about whether actually the foam itself is more important. But in some combination, the special new foam, the high stack height alongside the carbon plate provides an improvement in running economy, energy return, and ultimately performance.
There have been concerns about these new innovations and technology throughout the elite running world. And so new World Athletics rules state that for road races, shoes must have a maximum stack height of 40 millimeters. For track events, it's between 20 and 25 millimeters, and that depends on the distance. But across all shoes, they must only contain one carbon fiber plate.
These rules were brought in by World Athletics to preserve the integrity of competition, because in many parts people were worried about the fact that the new innovations were placing more of an emphasis on the conversation about shoes than they were on the athletes themselves. Particularly when you think about a level playing field at an elite level where athletes are sponsored by different shoe brands and whether or not they have access to the same sorts of technology.
So even though there's been a lot of debate around carbon plates in shoes, a lot of brands have followed Nike's lead and some are even on their second iteration of these shoes. So let's take a look at some of our favourites out there and put them to the test.
This is the Asics Metaracer, and it's probably the most recognisable as a racing flat or traditional road racing shoe for those of us that are more used to traditional looking shoes. So if you are looking for something with a lower stack height that can perhaps feel more responsive, more aggressive, and give you more feeling that you're closer to the road, then this could be something worth considering. Now, there's no doubt that the combination of new foam technology and carbon plates does provide a performance boost, but a lot of the high stack shoes, one of the things that they have in common is that they can feel a little bit unstable when you wear them for the first time and actually take a little bit of getting used to. And that's not the case here with the lower stack height on offer. In fact, putting them on, they immediately felt familiar. Definitely fast, but familiar. And if you do have a gait that becomes increasingly less efficient as you get more fatigued over the course of a longer event, particularly like the marathon, like a lot of us do, where your knees might start to roll in a little bit more or you might pronate more excessively at the ankle, then the extra stability that's afforded by the lower stack height might be something that's a real benefit to you. With a lot of discussion about the contribution of the new foam technology to the overall performance, there's no denying that because there's a lower stack height, there's less foam in this shoe. And in fact, recently, an Asics-sponsored athlete, Sarah Hall, ran in a development shoe at the London Marathon. It looked a lot like the Metaracer, but it had a significantly visibly higher stack height. So actually that could be an indication of the future from Asics, maybe one to watch out for. It could also be seen as an admission of what's required to really compete at the highest level, with those shoes with the higher stack heights. Personally, I really enjoyed running in these shoes. They felt familiar straight out of the box, and they felt fast across a whole range of different activities. So right from almost maximum pace, running strides, all the way through to longer intervals. They felt responsive, they felt quick, but in a different way to some of the others on test. Definitely less bouncy, but for that, perhaps more controlled.
This is the On Cloudboom. So with a stack height of 20 millimeters, it's nowhere near as high as the Nike Vaporflies, for example. It's an incredibly lightweight shoe. So this one actually price-wise comes in a little bit cheaper than some of the other carbon plate shoes that are out there on the market at the moment. When testing this shoe, for me, it felt like one to be used over shorter distances, maybe fast 5Ks or 10Ks, but anything above that I would probably struggle because it's an incredibly firm shoe. Size-wise, I found that the On Cloudboom did come up very, very narrow. In fact, I've had to take the laces out of a couple of the eyelets there just to give my foot a little bit extra space. Technology-wise, what On have done here is they've used their Cloud Tech technology. So you can see along the sole here, you've got alternating gaps in between to give you a bit more of a cushioned ride. That said, it is still incredibly firm. And the carbon plate within this one is a carbon infused speed board, which you can see along the sides of the midsole, and you've got the speed board in the bottom there as well. So if you're looking for a fast, shorter distance shoe, then the On Cloudboom could be the one for you.
This is the New Balance Fuel Cell RC Elite. And for me, this is the shoe that feels the closest when you put it on to running in the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent. It feels bouncy, and there is a feeling of it immediately propelling you forward on contact right through to toe off. There are some differences though. Ultimately, it's the combination of the way that the carbon plate and the foam work together to provide the feeling when you're out there running. And for me, that manifested itself as having a very distinct sweet spot where they felt the best. And for me, that was between my threshold pace and my 10K pace, where they did feel fantastic and like they were a real game changer in the way I was able to run. They felt good at maximum pace too, but I'd say less revolutionary for me. So it'd be interesting to see whether different people with different mechanics would find that their sweet spot for these was at a different pace. I really like the degree of grip that I felt that the outsole gave me. Some of the other shoes on test have sacrificed the outsole to save weight, but that didn't really feel like the case here. They fit nice and securely. There isn't a gusseted tongue, but I didn't have any problems with it moving around. The very nature of all of the shoe technology that's under discussion at the moment means that it's quite likely that there will be non-responders and responders, and that might differ from brand to brand and shoe to shoe. Things like weight, biomechanics, foot shape, and the way that you run are all going to have an impact on whether you find that a particular shoe is effective for you. Ultimately for me, the shape of the shoe in combination with the distribution of the foam technology in the midsole led to a really natural foot movement with a small degree of pronation, owing to the fact that there is more foam on the outside compared to underneath the arch. That small degree of pronation is great because controlled pronation is what leads to fast running. But if that pronation becomes too pronounced as you fatigue or uncontrolled, then that's what can lead to injury or inefficiency. So for me, I'd want to be sure that I had confidence in my nice neutral foot movement to maximise the benefit that I would get from wearing the RC Elite.
This is the Brooks Hyperion Elite 2, so the second iteration of a carbon plate shoe from Brooks. The upgrade from the original makes it feel like a much more stable ride. Some of the shoes tested for this video, I personally found like there wasn't an awful lot of support in the ankle, and that comes down to the fact that they are incredibly light shoes and they're just not built to support. So you do sometimes feel like you're going to go over on your ankle. What I would say with the Brooks one is that actually this felt the most stable out of the ones that I've personally tested for this video. So the Hyperion Elite comes up as pretty true to size. If anything, I do have a bit of a wider foot, so the toe box did feel a little on the narrow side, but nothing too uncomfortable at all. And in fact, it felt like it just hugged my foot and gave me a bit of support, like I said previously. So the Hyperion Elite price-wise is a little on the expensive end of the scale, so it's not the cheapest out there, and I would say that you do get your money's worth with the shoe, but you are going to have to be willing to part with a little bit of extra cash in order to purchase the Hyperion Elite 2. The Hyperion Elite 2 has a stack height of 37 millimeters, so much higher than the Cloudboom, for example, and getting close to the Nike Vaporfly and that limit from World Athletics of 40 millimeters. Overall, a really stable, really comfortable ride, and it definitely made me feel pretty fast with that rocking propelling motion with that carbon plate. So if you're willing to spend a little bit of extra money, then the Brooks Hyperion Elite 2 is a good shoe.
This is the Hoka One One Rocket X. And actually the irony here for me is that Hoka have often made a bit of a splash for their shoes looking quite different. I'm thinking the 10-9 and the Clifton Edge, for example. But with the Rocket X, these are actually probably the most normal looking shoes I've been sent by Hoka. And that's in a category where competitor shoes are actually looking increasingly different. And whilst the shoes in this category are eye-wateringly expensive, actually the Rocket X is by far the cheapest on test. It's not a cheap shoe, but it is cheaper. And I've been excited to test this ever since I saw Alafine Tuliamuk take victory in the US Olympic marathon trials wearing these shoes in a Nike-dominated field. I've previously found Hoka shoes to be quite narrow, but I thought that these were a little bit more generous. They have a gusseted tongue which provides a really nice fit, and ultimately the high stack height and load drop won't be a surprise to any Hoka fans out there. The sole gave good grip on the road, but it didn't feel quite so sure-footed on wet road as some of the competitor shoes. In fact, you'll see that the coverage of the outsole is relatively minimal, which is probably what's responsible for that. Whether or not it's the lower drop that doesn't allow for the same degree of mechanical assistance, I did find that these left me feeling a little bit more flat-footed than some of the others and provided less of a degree of propulsion from foot contact to toe off. So they're a great option if you're used to low drop shoes and you're looking for something light and responsive, but they definitely feel less revolutionary than some of the other brands' interpretations. They're also less bouncy and cushioned. I actually really enjoyed running with them. For me, the lower cushioning actually gave me a better feel for the road, which I enjoyed. And I think their pedigree's been proven by that success in the Olympic marathon trials that I mentioned. But I do think that overall, these are going to be a shoe that are a positive for some people, but other people might not get on with.
This is the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro. Easy for you to say, not quite so easy to remember. I always manage to get this one wrong. Anyway, this shoe is Adidas's carbon plate shoe, and it has a carbon plate in the heel and carbon rods through it too. At 225 grams, this is actually the heaviest shoe on test, and you can tell when holding it that it has got quite a bit of weight to it on the sole. Running in it though, they do feel incredibly lightweight, incredibly fast. The upper on them is like a mesh, and it feels like you're not really wearing shoes at all. You've just got soles strapped to the bottom of your feet. The rocking motion from this shoe really felt like I was being propelled forward from the minute I put them on. So even just walking in these shoes, not even running, it felt like you really wanted to get on your toes and go. So I found that this shoe was incredibly comfortable. The fit was perfect for me, width-wise and size-wise. I'm a UK 6.5 and it came up true to size. What I was saying about ankles earlier, this shoe, because of the really low profile around the ankle, it did feel to me at times that there was no support or stability there. So if you are prone to rolling on your ankles, then maybe consider that if you're looking at the Adidas Adios Adizero Pro. The sole on this one was what struck me first about it straight out of the box. It's incredibly smooth. So I've run in this shoe in the wet, and I was really concerned about the traction on the ground, especially if you're taking fast corners, for example. So far, I haven't had a problem with that, but it is worth noting because I have found in other shoes that have got incredibly smooth soles that obviously the grip just isn't there in wetter conditions. Also, the colorway, let's just talk about how beautiful this shoe looks. I am a sucker for a pretty shoe, and I really love what Adidas have done with this one. So overall, the Adidas shoe is up there with one of my favourites, but I do think that I would have some concerns about how long they'll last you with this sole. I haven't done enough miles in them yet to be able to give you a good rough estimate of how long they would last. But a beautiful shoe, a comfortable shoe, and one that definitely made me feel faster.
Now that we've taken you through a lot of different options, it's time for us to let you know our personal favourites and where we'd put our money if we wanted to maximise our return in terms of running performance. Now for me, I'm a bit of a traditionalist, and so I really enjoyed the familiarity of putting on the Metaracer. But ultimately, if it was my money, I would probably put it into the New Balance RC Elite. I felt like they gave me the most immediate return. Although it's hard to say whether that's better than the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent. Ultimately, there's so much data behind that and so many results out there that it's pretty hard to get away from just how successful that shoe's been.
So my favourite shoe? Well, I do run in Nikes an awful lot, so the Vaporfly is there at the top for me. But picking one of the alternatives for this video, it's going to have to be the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro. I love the look of this shoe. I love the feel of this shoe. I love how fast it makes me feel, and I love feeling the propulsion even when walking in this shoe. When you put it on, it feels incredibly special. And when you're going to be spending a lot of money on these carbon plated shoes, you want something that is being kept for best, kept for races, something that is going to make you feel good, as well as helping you run that little bit faster. And I did feel like these shoes did make me feel a bit faster.
So what do you think about carbon plate running shoes and all of the new technology? Would you fork out for a pair, or have you done so already? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you next time on the Running Channel.